So I've shared a lot of my exit from the Mormon Church in bits and pieces on this platform, but I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of consolidate some of the contributing factors to my decision to investigate, and I mean really investigate the church. Started with, number one, the church's stance on LGBTQ people, particularly when my own child came out to me in the fall of 2021. The second contributing factor was the way members of the church, including myself, would treat ex-members or ex-Mormons, people who have left the church. It was really disheartening to me to see the way that people who left the church were ostracized by people who left the church, and I was guilty of that too. Another contributing factor was my ex-husband's decision as the priesthood holder in our family to make a unilateral decision to move our family to Seattle when my child from my first marriage still had 2 years of high school left. He would say that the Lord inspired him to move to Seattle. And I couldn't wrap my head around how on earth a loving Heavenly Father would command a mother like myself to have to choose between her husband and her child. And the fourth and major contributing factor to my decision to investigate the church was the way the church talks to victims of abuse. That it's their job to just sweep the abuse under the rug and forgive their abusers. And oftentimes they will protect the abusers from any form of consequence. That is so wrong. That is so wrong. So last summer, when I had so much weighing on this proverbial shelf of mine, I decided I would do some investigation with a desire to become a more nuanced member of the church. I still wanted to believe. I still wanted to be a part of the church. So I stumbled across a podcast called Latter-day Struggles, and the hosts' efforts were to create more nuanced, loving members of the church. After binging about 50 episodes in 2 weeks, I finally got the courage to read those documents that I had heard were very anti-Mormon. I read A Letter to My Wife, the CES Letter, and the church's Gospel Topics essays. I spent 3 solid days doing nothing but investigating the church, and on July 23rd, after I finished reading the CES Letter, I realized that none of it was true. I was 45 years old before I even heard of how Joseph Smith looked at a stone in a hat. And I was a strong, active member of the LDS Church. I had been taught my entire life with pictures of Joseph Smith poring over these gold plates, and then to realize that he never even used them in translation, I felt I'd been lied to. I was 45 years old before I realized that Joseph Smith had a 14-year-old wife. I had never heard of Kinderhook plates. I didn't know about the Book of Abraham translation. I didn't know any of these things, and I was an active member of the church, but I had been taught my whole life to not investigate these things that were perceived as anti-Mormon. So I've arrived at this place where I have no desire to ever return to this church. I can't unlearn what I've learned. I can't feel as though the church hasn't deceived me, because I do. So if you're a member of the Mormon Church and you're watching this, I understand that knee-jerk response to want to defend the church. I get it. I was there myself for a very long time. But I would encourage you that if you do have anything that just doesn't sit well with you, to investigate it, to look deeper, to read these things, the CES Letter, A Letter to My Wife, the Gospel Topics essays, which were written by the church themselves. I would encourage you to read them and then come to an educated, informed decision on whether or not you want to stay a part of this. If you choose to stay a part of the church, wonderful. That is your choice, your decision, and we will support that. And if you choose to believe something different, if you choose to leave the church behind you, we support you with that as well.